bright spells with maximum temperatures of 8 to 11 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now then, you're very welcome back. So we're going to get stuck into the papers this hour. I'll run you through the headlines first of all. The Sun have an exclusive on their front page, and it's Barry McGuigan, my hell. You'll have seen over the last 19 days, up until Wednesday, there was a court case involving Carl Frampton and Barry McGuigan. A glad €6 million Frampton case is over. This is Barry McGuigan, exclusive interview with Stephen Bryan on the front page. He's talking about everything he's been through recently. He's lost, obviously, his daughter, his sister, his sister-in-law. If people only understood what I'd been through. And then inside, there's 4 or 5 pages of coverage here. Pages 4 and 5, they detail the case. Jason Johnson goes through it. Barry McGuigan, Carl Frampton, one of the most dramatic legal cases in recent years is how it's described. A megabucks deal between the two former pals, believed to have ended the bitter showdown. The settlement was sealed after behind-the-scenes talks during a bruising 19-day court battle. Neither side had landed a knockout blow. Both have suggested they're happy with the deal that was struck. And then Jason Johnson details their partnership down the years, which started in 2009 or so and went up to 2017. So a month after Frampton was due to take on Gutierrez in Belfast, the fighter pulled the plug. He would later dramatically accuse McGuigan, 59 years old, of underpaying him by millions over fights in Northern Ireland, Britain and the US. He said that as both manager and promoter, McGuigan's interests clashed, and that it had all led to him losing out on £6 million. In court, McGuigan described these allegations as ludicrous. And then in turn, McGuigan, who's the owner of Cyclone Promotion, said Frampton had breached his contract and left his firm £4 million out of pocket, which was denied by Frampton. And on it went over 19 days in court. The relationship, quote-unquote, toxic. And on Wednesday then, Mr. Justice Huddleston was notified that a settlement had been reached. Frampton said he was very, very happy with the deal, but he doubted he would ever work with McGuigan again. And then inside on page 2, there's an interview with Barry McGuigan. He talks about the abuse he's been receiving from trolls across the trial. I'm so glad it's over. He talks about boxing, says boxing is in the worst state that I can ever remember it. He says the effect of Daniel Kinahan has been to diminish and tarnish the sport. I don't think boxing is going to regain its standing until Daniel Kinahan is no longer part of it. Calls him a black mark on the sport. The grip that Kinahan has on the sport is really very worrying. Everyone in Ireland, north, south, knows about him. The sport is in a perilous place. And then he talked generally about the future. He said boxing should not be dominated by 1 or 2 large players. No one operator should have a monopoly. The funding in boxing should be regulated to ensure it's from transparent and appropriate sources. All of the governing bodies need to be more accountable, he says, talking about the sport generally here. I'd love to have an international task force that would sit and hover above the 4 existing organisations that are in power, the WBC, the WBA, the IBF and the WBO. He says that organisation should be able to police doping, medical matters and rankings worldwide, as well as the potential monopolisation of the sport. And he says boxing's policing of doping and the existing drug sanctions are inadequate. Someone will die in the ring in the hands of a doper if the problem is not cracked down upon. And he says now, in the aftermath of this trial, Barry McGuigan, I'm going to spend some much-needed quality time with my family. So that's an exclusive there on the front page of The Sun on Sunday. On their back page, stand and deliver, Kenny call to end record dismal run. That's Stephen Kenny ahead of the game in Cardiff this evening. I have the front page of the Sunday Independent then. Classy Cats, a picture of TJ Reid, who scored the 2nd goal for Kilkenny last night. You just cannot write off Kilkenny and Brian Cody. It's insane. Quick fire goals put Kilkenny on road to victory. And then over here, McIlroy left with too much to do. Dermot Gilleese here about the Masters, which concludes, well, as we speak, really. Leaders out in about 40 minutes. McIlroy with rounds of 66 and 67 in rounds 2 and 3, but started with a 75. And only one player in the top 50 of this tournament has had a worse round than 75, and McIlroy's still able to play so well. He's in the top 10 as things stand. Sunday Times, similar theme, picture of McIlroy, mind the gap. McIlroy shoots 67 but trails Dustin Johnson by 8 at US Masters. And then Andy Townsend, Delaney lost the plot. This is Andy Townsend. He's out promoting at the moment, Andy Townsend, this new Jack Charlton documentary, Finding Jack Charlton. So he's doing a few interviews. and he says that John Delaney lost sight of the plot. He says, if I saw him, I would tell him, John, you effed up big time. You had everything going for you, and whatever you did, you let it slip through your fingers, pal. You missed the point of what your job was. He says, I always had a bit of a gut feeling about John, that he didn't always have the best intentions about what it was all about, creating a platform for young kids to improve. That on the face of it may seem very unfair because I don't know the work that John was doing, but I always doubted his best intentions, was Townsend's view from afar. I'm sure John Delaney would disagree. Sunday World then, Morris Stanson, that's Jake Morris for Tipperary yesterday, who beat Cork 218 to 117, thanks in a very significant way to his goal. Premier County waltz on through, and then beneath that, Jack Byrne is just thrilled to be involved with Ireland again after his COVID scare. Mail on Sunday, they're going with Premier Class. Champions find their fire to see off Rebel Rising. Again, that's Tipperary 218, Cork 117 in the hurling yesterday. And beneath that, masterful Rory. McIlroy shoots 5 under to stay near top as Johnson scorches clear, which he most certainly has. Katie Taylor fought Miriam Gutierrez yesterday, so very good, as in Gutierrez is the headline, very good Katie. Taylor impresses again as she beats Spaniard on points in London. She dominated throughout, Taylor. It was just complete one-way traffic. And then in hurling, Kilkenny 220, Galway 24 points. It's so sweet. Proud Cody piles the praise on his comeback Cats, and there's a shot there of Richie Hogan, who just was wonderful yesterday and deserves it probably after a long 13-14 months since the All-Ireland final last year. And then Star Sunday, King Kane. This is Gareth Southgate. He reckons, and he's probably not wrong really, that Harry Kane has a great chance of topping Wayne Rooney's England goal scoring record. Kane is on 32 goals in 49 matches. Nobody has got to that mark quicker in 50, except for Jimmy Greaves, who hit it 43 goals to Kane's 32. But he's on track, says Gareth Southgate, to be England's top goal scorer of all time. We have with us Tommy Conlon of the Sunday Independent, and we have Cliodhna O'Connor, All-Ireland winner with Dublin and part of the Dublin hurling coaching ticket. You're both very welcome. Just on Katie Taylor, she's on a few of the front pages. Tommy, it was complete one-way traffic last night. We've seen Taylor involved in some really epic fights of late, notably against Delphine Pursoon, but the mandatory challenger last night, Miriam Gutierrez, was nowhere near the quality.
No, Joe. Good afternoon to you and Cliodhna. I as early as the third round, the Sky Sports commentator was using the expression that Miriam Gutierrez was woefully out of her depth, and she could realistically, Gutierrez, have been taken out of the fight during that third round. I mean, she was getting battered by Katie on the ropes. And at the end of the fourth, she was put down on the canvas with a brilliant right-left combination from Taylor, saved by the bell on that occasion. The bell just rang as Katie landed those shots that put her opponent on the floor. It does raise the issue again, which I've been mindful of nearly from the start of Katie's pro career, is the standard in women's pro boxing. And let's I'll not generalize and totally, but even let's confine it to Katie's weight category, lightweight. Katie picked up 5 world titles in 15 fights. That's 1 every 3 fights. There's almost no pyramid of talent, pyramid that in women's professional boxing, certainly in the lightweight category, that one expects that any sport that has the title world champion, there ought to be, and there usually is, an absolutely ridiculously competitive pyramid, even to get to close to the top. And there's virtually none in this case. And Katie won her first pro title in her 7th fight, and her opponent that day, Anahi Esther Sanchez, didn't even make the weight. She was overweight on the scales, and Katie had that first world title without even having to throw a punch that night. And it's not Katie Taylor's fault, and she's bringing all her competitive integrity and credibility and the prestige of her reputation to this sport. I'm afraid, which right now at the moment, in her category at least, has very little prestige and credibility. And I think Sky Sports and Eddie Hearn and et al. Are selling us a bit of a pig in a poke at the moment, vis-a-vis Katie and her world titles.
It was very notable that right from the off, Matthew Macklin was saying this fight should almost be stopped. You know, even from the 4th, 5th round, he was saying, what's the point of this? Her corner should end it. The referee, John Latham, looked closely a few times. I had a bit more sympathy for him. You know, you have to give a fighter the chance maybe to land a knockout blow, and you have to give them a fighter's chance, literally. But her corner allowed her to take punishment for 10 rounds. She was completely out of her depth. I suppose the point might be, Cliodhna, whether you agree with Tommy to total extent or to some extent, in a generation's time, you would hope that all of women's boxing will progress on the back of Katie's exploits. You know, at the moment she's making big money. Often she's fighting fighters who have jobs elsewhere and who are trying to juggle a pro career with a normal working life. You want to get to a point where in a generation or two, Taylor's established the sport and we have more depth. She's definitely at the forefront of getting this thing moving now.
I think she is, Joe, and I think that seems to be part of our motivation for making the transition anyway, is to raise the standard, I think, and by her maintaining her high standards, and that says a lot about an athlete in any sport as well, who doesn't yet. Tommy's right, she's by far over and over again better than the opponents she comes up, and the example of someone not even making weight says a lot. But somebody has to, in a sport that's floundering, or an arena that's floundering, somebody has to change the standard or the expectation. I think that's what Katie's doing, and we always have that question of, does it lessen her achievements, or does it actually make them even more impressive? That if in a generation's time or in a decade's time we see, oh my God, women's boxing and the lightweight category is just catapulted, and that competition in the pyramid Tommy's talking about has now evolved. But unless somebody drags it forward, and unless there's something to strive for, it never. Everybody just, floats around at that mediocre level, and we can definitely agree that Katie's so far from mediocre. So either people catch up with her, or she keeps winning.
It's an interesting question you asked. Does it dampen how we perceive her achievements, or does it in some ways, even make them look more extraordinary? Maybe they're not mutually exclusive, Tommy, those two arguments.
No, and it's important, I think, to separate out the sort of two parallel tracks that Katie is on. I mean, just purely in terms of the belts, the 5 belts she has now, undefeated in the pro ranks. In sporting terms, I think that doesn't really amount to a hill of beans, really. On the other side, though, I mean, is the much more important social and sporting legacy of Taylor. And she talked again about legacy last night. I mean, she is arguably the most seminal Irish athlete of all time, either gender. She may be the most influential, the most important in terms of how she's inspired, and let's not just the female population and hundreds of thousands of girls and young women, but also a lot of men too, and expanded our horizons in terms of, or helped to expand our horizons in terms of where women's sport can go. And it's an enormous legacy that transcends the matter of a WBO or a WC lightweight belt in the pro ranks. Obviously, it's way bigger than that, and there's no in any way denying or trying to dilute that in any way. It's just that I get slightly fed up with the kind of the unquestioning sort of elevation of achievements in the pro game mainly by the pro boxing's sort of. I mean, it's part of pro boxing from day one. It's like sort of, it has its carnival barkers. It always had. And they're just doing their job of hyping up Katie, the fights and the belts, whereas I think there is not a great deal of substance to those achievements at all.
Is Is that the problem, Tommy, though? Because we all agree with the social side of it that you described, and we're all so supportive and on board and see the impact she's taken or she's making. So we kind of ignore that sporting competition bit because we can't possibly detract from her because we know it's so important. So we'll buy into the hype and the competitiveness and the sport side of things to make sure that we don't detract from all the other good stuff.
Maybe, yeah, Cliodhna, maybe that's true. And look, I mean, no one has a bad word to say about Katie. Why would they? And it's almost like you're taking, it's almost ungallant. It's almost seen as heretical.
Yeah, it's like burning the tricolour if you say it.
Yeah. It's taboo, and it's really not to do with Katie at all. It's the profession she's in. It's the industry she's in. She's in the fight business now, and she's been in the fight business as opposed to the sport of boxing since autumn 2016 when she turned pro, and she's been in the fight business. And it's just that I think we ought to be a little more sceptical and a little bit more circumspect about hailing these achievements. They don't compare and never will compare to her Olympic gold medal in London in 2012. In sporting terms, that is her landmark achievement and a pinnacle in the history of Irish sport.
We're here with Cliodhna O'Connor and Tommy Conlon. So that's Katie Taylor. As for Stephen Kenny in Ireland, I know lots of you listen to this on a Monday, so you will be listening to all this with even a certain smugness, depending on what we say here. But I'll give you a sense of where we are in the papers today on Stephen Kenny. So Gary Breen, for instance, says in The Sun that the philosophy isn't wrong, just the execution. Paul McGrath in the Sunday World, Kenny tactics look doomed, is the headline. That's Paul McGrath's take. Kenny tactics look doomed. He says things like, yes, we do have young talent, but so does every other country. And he compares English talent to Irish talent, and frankly, there is no comparison. Where are Ireland's gifted kids? He says there were championship teams, or else they're on the bench in the Premier League. He said, I had my say here last month about what Stephen Kenny's trying to do in getting the team to be more comfortable in possession of the ball. I don't think it's working for us, and I don't believe it will work anytime soon. Playing out from the back will only lead to the concession of more goals to match Finland's last month. He says, I'm not convinced that all our players have bought into what the manager is trying to do. There were times at Wembley when players should have been shown for passes and they didn't. And then he said, we had 2 shots on goal in the whole match. Dear God. And he says, there was no fire in Ireland, no desire. We hardly kicked anyone. So that's Paul McGrath, who's down on things. There are an array of pieces then. Dave Kelly, growing pains, proving tough to manage. Eamon Sweeney's writing about it. We have Paul Rowan. For instance, I have Dave Kelly open in front of me. And he talks about how, Stephen Kenny is trying to reverse an articulated truck of Irish footballing philosophy around and attempt to fuse it into the smoothest running engine of expression possible. He talks about there are compounding factors, mocking Stephen Kenny, a swathe of absent bodies, chief amongst them, but the more pressing realities are asking a callow bunch to learn the ropes at an exalted level far beyond their club status, as well as asking older players to discard the muscle memory of how things were done in the past. He does say Ireland produced their best passage of play in the 9th minute at Wembley, but the sweeping move lacked the finishing touch. Their first shot on target arrived in only the 71st minute. It seemed an apt illustration in the gulf between devising a game plan and delivering one. The longer the gap remains, the more difficult it will be for the public to accept. And then Kenny's greatest fear might be that his team stop believing too. Cliodhna, you're in the coaching business. You know how difficult it is. So what are you making of the coverage of Stephen Kenny and how things are going thus far? He's played, 9 matches, I think? No, or maybe 7 matches, excuse me. Ireland have had no win in 9. Stephen Kenny's had 7 matches, no win yet, and no goals in the last 5 games.
I think it's very challenging for Stephen at the minute, and mostly because of the positivity and the goodwill that's been behind him. It's like everyone's sort of holding their breath, waiting for the team to score, because we really want it to work and we really want everybody buys into what he's trying to achieve. But maybe there's a naivety too in terms of how quickly that can happen. And like a lot of this coverage is centred around Matt Doherty's interview after the last game, and he talked about giving up a bit against England and being embarrassed, and people suggesting, is that a criticism, or is he speaking out of turn? what does that mean? But I think it means, like, it's reflective of a team who's trying to do something different and buy in, and they seem to be quite unified in what they're trying to achieve. And of course, when it doesn't happen, they're professional footballers. Their job is the ball has to go into the net, and that's not happening. There's also reference to this this week. The management team showed that the team a collage of all their nearly chances, all the attacks they made and their opportunities. I suppose just trying to reinforce we've got to keep doing the good things, and eventually we'll execute. But you cannot expect to fundamentally change how a team plays, with all the challenges around injured players and selection and the standard of players that's been commented on as well. So there's so many things that have to improve for this all to come together. And it's really, really naive to think that would happen. Okay, there's been 7 games, but relatively speaking, it's a short space of time that those 7 games have occurred within.
Tommy, I'll bring you in just one moment, but there's been an incredible turnaround at Croke Park. Mossy Quinn, explain what's happening.
I think Andy McEntee had myself and John on loop in the dressing room at half time. We said they'd need goals, we said they'd need runners off the shoulder, and they've just gone 5 points clear. They've scored 4 goals and 3 points in the second half, Joe, and Kildare have only scored 4 points. They got 2 goals within the first couple of minutes of the second half to really blow it wide open and get themselves back into it. And Kildare have just lost all their shape. They've known to get a handle on the ball. They have brought Daniel Flynn on as a sub, and he's made a big impact, and it would probably raise questions as why he wasn't starting or on the pitch earlier. But the game is going away from Kildare. 5-point lead for Meath at the moment, as we've 61.5 minutes gone on the scoreboard here.
Okay, extraordinary. Meath 4-6, Kildare 14 points out of nowhere. And then let's check in at Pearse Stadium. Andy Moran, where are we, Andy?
Yeah, we're 8-5 at half-time. There was 6 minutes of injury time there at the end of the first half, Joe, just because Johnny Dewan got a bad injury, so he went off. So there was 6 minutes of injury time. So we're just half-time has literally just started. Galway really came into it. Their defensive shape just kind of started slowing Mayo's attack down, and all of a sudden they came more and more into it. And Aidan moved further out the field, and Killian moved further out the field, which allowed Sean Kelly to come into the centre of the field more and become more of a force going forward. So he's got 1 assist, and 2 of the other 5 points that they've got have come from his breaks right through the middle, which has opened Mayo up. And then Shane Walsh and the guys have just looped in around them and got it. So Galway have got 5 points. Walsh has got 3 of them. Mayo have got 8. A spread of scores, which we were looking for before the game. Killian, Tommy Conroy, Diarmid, they've all got points. Ryan O'Donoghue, Matty Rowan and Paddy Durkin. So it's a good game, really close, really tight. And as we expected, going down to the wire, a goal here, Joe, is going to be vital in this game. So whoever's the first to hit the onion bag, we've have a good chance going on to win.
Okay, very good. Andy Moran, thank you at Pearse Stadium. Mayo lead by 3, 8 points to 5 in the Connacht final. We're chatting through the papers with Cliodhna O'Connor and Tommy Conlon. Tommy, for instance, Eamon Sweeney says that there is still a lot of goodwill out there for the new boss, but the excitement and optimism which greeted his appointment have largely dissipated and been replaced by a certain amount of trepidation. You feel slightly worried for him. He makes one other point I thought was fair. On the new style adopted by Kenny, he makes the point this isn't just like because it's nice. He says there's a pragmatic element to it. He says, on a couple of occasions in the second half, unnerved by England pressure on the edge of our own box, Ireland resorted to the old expedient of humping the ball long. But England, he says, simply recovered the ball, recovered possession, attacked immediately. He says the most compelling argument in favour of the change in approach is pragmatic rather than aesthetic.
Yeah, it's that's a useful point to make, that it's not necessarily some sort of aesthetic sort of ambition that Stephen Kenny is building this idea on. It's actually the practical need. If you manage to pass the ball to a team player, strangely enough, you have a better chance of keeping on the ball if you pass it to a player wearing the same colour jersey as you. And listen, the alternative, hoofing the ball out of defence only for it to come back in on top of it 20 seconds later. We've all seen that movie far too many times with Irish soccer teams, national teams, for decades. And that point it's well worth making. It is actually a practical solution if it can be executed. Actually passing the ball and trying to keep possession go back to the first line you quoted from Eamon there about the excitement and optimism on Kenny's appointment. Personally, I didn't have a great deal of excitement and optimism because the players, the reality was a new manager, same players, the same, that very, very sort of kind of worrying sense that the standard of Irish players at the moment is maybe historically bad. And maybe going back maybe to the 1970s, and maybe it wasn't even as bad then. I mean, it's incredible how low the standard is right now. And irrespective of the manager, that reality is going to pertain. And we had 3 second division players starting for us on Thursday night. One for Wycombe Wanderers, Bristol City, and Norwich City. And as usual, you could never fault their honesty. And nearly in any international sport, Irish players, men or women who represent their country, do it with honour and integrity. But there is in this current moment an absolutely dire level of ability, technical ability, and even athleticism. Take Conor Howrahan there, who actually has the proverbial educated left foot. I think a part of his problem in terms of not getting into the Aston Villa team and not really making an impression for the Ireland team is that underestimated quality of Premier League players, athletic capacity, and both the skill, technique, passing, and athleticism were lacking them all to a great degree. And I'm afraid we're going to be singing this song for the next couple of years, Joe.
Well, I'm not sure you're not allowed to take an ad break, but do stay with us for more pearls of optimism from Tommy Conlon and Cliodhna. Okay, I'm not sure I disagree with you either, to be honest. Cliodhna O'Connor, we're back in just one moment.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. The Future Proof Podcast.
How will technology transform education? Do we need to know facts anymore? Will children be taught by robots? Because the theme for Science Week this year is Choose Your Future, on this week's Future Proof, we'll be looking at what learning might look like in the next decade.
The Future Proof Podcast.
Proudly supported by Science Foundation Ireland.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now on newstalk.com or on the Newstalk app.
These days, we've all got reasons to want to hit the open road. And now, there's one more. The Opel Open Road event. Incredible offers on a range of Opel vehicles that have been tailored to suit every modern lifestyle. Choose from the Opel Corsa, Insignia and Crossland X. Pair it with one of our flexible payment options, plus 3 years free servicing, and drive off in a safe and reliable car. In a year that hasn't been all that reliable. The Opel Open Road event, for the better times ahead. Now on at opel.ie. Opel, the future is everyone's.
The famous Holland & Barrett 1 cent sale is back, with buy one get one for just 1 cent. On hundreds of everyday favourites, and you can even mix and match. Shop the 1 cent sale now, in-store and at hollandandbarrett.ie. And 17th of the 11th, 2020, selected items, cheapest item 1 cent, subject to availability.
InsureMyCars.ie. Make it a really good afternoon and check out the great car insurance discounts at InsureMyCars.ie. Ireland's trusted car insurance specialists. For super family savings, check out InsureMyCars.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as InsureMyCars.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Our generation are the generation with the power to change the world, with small steps that make a big difference. Switch to SSE Airtricity and switch to 100% green electricity. Switch today and get €270 welcome credit and 10% off electricity and gas. Free phone 1-800-818-466 or visit sseairtricity.com. This is Generation Green. EAB €1,797.88. Offer from the 15th of the 7th, 2019. Rates valid from the 1st to the 5th, 2020. Subject to change. 1 year standard unit rate discount for new home electricity and gas customers and direct debit and e-bill. For details of T's and C's, EAB, rates, exit fees, standing charge and green energy claims, see sseairtricity.com.
Get the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE 5G or the new iPhone 12 mini with 5G free when you switch to Air Mobile. With no limits 5G data and unlimited calls and texts, connect more today on Air Mobile, Ireland's largest 5G network. For more, call 1-800 500 300 or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. Unlimited allowance subject to fair use. Free handset subject to switching to Air. Available on selected plans. 5G network coverage subject to availability. For terms, see air.ie.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. For the first time ever, bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest game of the week right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18 plus. Your health is your wealth, and in these uncertain times, your wealth also needs protection. Smart investors understand how owning gold can do exactly that. By owning physical gold as coins or bars that can be easily and safely delivered to you or professionally stored for you by Ireland's longest established and trusted precious metal experts, Goldcore. Visit Goldcore today at gold.ie. That's GOLD.ie.
Rewarding your staff this Christmas? With One for All gift cards, you can gift anything from €15 to €500 completely tax-free. And you're supporting retail in Ireland. Accepted in over 11,000 outlets nationwide, like Tesco, Argos, Woodies, Boots, Currys, and online. Order at oneforallrewards.ie or place a corporate order at your local post office, and you could win a daily prize worth over €100. Terms and conditions apply. The One for All gift card is issued by GVS Prepaid Europe Limited. GVS Prepaid Europe Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
It's flu season, and while anyone can catch the flu, it can cause serious illness in children. The flu virus spreads easily from person to person. That's why children, aged 2 to 12, can now get a free flu vaccine. It's given through a nasal spray and provides safe and effective protection from the flu. So don't delay. Book a free appointment with your GP or pharmacist and protect your family from the flu this winter. Visit hse.ie/flu for more information. From the HSE.
Looking to upgrade your car? The Ford Upgrade and Save promotion can help you do just that. Save up to €3,150 and get an outstanding 7-year warranty on a new Ford built for tomorrow. There's the Ford Focus, the Fiesta, the new Puma, all available as mild hybrids with advanced EcoBoost technology, all offering better efficiency and lower emissions, all a step in the right direction for less. Search Upgrade and Save or text Ford to 50015 and we'll arrange a call with your local Ford dealer. Texts cost a standard rate. Vehicles must be ordered by November 30th and registered by February 28th. Terms and conditions apply. See Ford.ie for full details.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're welcome back. So latest in the football, starting with the ladies in TG Carr All-Ireland Senior Championship Group 1. Cork beat Kerry last week. They're currently beating Cavan quite comfortably, 6-7 to Cavan's 2-4. That's 25 points to Cavan's 10. And then Galway are double scores against Monaghan, 1-11 to Monaghan's 7 points in Group 2. In Pearse Stadium, Mayo are 10 points to 6 against Galway, so 4-point lead for Mayo. And then the extraordinary game thus far this afternoon, Kildare were in control against Meath at half-time. Meath came out and scored 4 goals in no time in the second half. It's Meath 4-8, Kildare 15 points. So that is Meath leading by 5 points at Croke Park. We're approaching full time. Elsewhere, Down should play Donegal in the Ulster final. They lead Cavan by 4, 110 to 1-6. Cliodhna O'Connor and Tommy Conlon with us. We're not going to get through everything, so I'm going to let each of you pick where we go next. You can have a think about that for a moment. There's a Polk image with Dylan Hartley. There's a few rugby pieces, something on the Jack Charlton documentary, The Masters. You have Dermot Gilleese and you have David Walsh. There's Liam Cahill, the Waterford hurling manager, talking to a few different people. And Tommy, I know you were writing yourself about Cork. I'll just mention, before I come to each of you, Graham Geraghty's wife is in the Sunday World talking about their health scare. So it seems like it was incredibly serious. This is Amanda Geraghty. Graham had a type 4 brain hemorrhage, which is the worst you can have. He's 47 years old now, Graham Geraghty. Obviously, Meath folk remember him very, very fondly. He was released from Beaumont on Friday evening. So essentially, he was at work and he had a headache. It got so bad his work colleagues thought he may have had the symptom of a stroke. One of them had training and recognised it was more than just a headache, so they called the ambulance straight away. It was quick thinking by his colleagues, said Graham Geraghty's wife, Amanda. They're highly trained in first aid there, and so he was very, very lucky. If that had been somewhere else, someone might have put him in bed or something, and it might have been a different outcome. He had a brain hemorrhage, type 4, it's the worst you can have, and he had an aneurysm to the back of the brain. I didn't see him for nearly 3 weeks either. There was no visiting with COVID. But she said she was very lucky because Jerry McEntee, who is a surgeon as well as being a former Meath footballer, kept her in the loop at all times. Had no health issue at all prior to suffering the brain hemorrhage. And she says now, I've had lots of phone calls from people who say you can't predict the recovery. It could be 3 months or it could be 6 months to a year. People often suffer with chronic fatigue and weakness, but knowing Graham, he'll probably change that bar. So that's the latest on Graham Geraghty. We wish him well. Cliodhna, where do you want to go?
Maybe Liam Cahill. Maybe there's two good interviews with him. I think
low enough profile. Liam Cahill, like he's come Tipperary player and won an under-21, followed by an under-20 All Ireland with Tip, the hurlers. I think the initial one was they were huge underdogs, and then out of the blue it seems he got the Waterford job. So we don't a lot of people won't know too much about Cahill.
Yeah, that's why I think that both the interviews, there's one with Dennis Walsh in the Times and Dermot Crowe and the Indo, they are quite personal, which is, it's nice to see for a GAA manager. And he talks about when he started with Tip and he got an all-star and everything was going great, and then it just didn't happen for him. His career never really took off, and he's quite honest about that he felt that he didn't he didn't have what it took, more so not from a hurling point of view, but he references that he couldn't deal with the bad days, that really good players, if things didn't go well, were able to deal with it and move on. He suggests that when things didn't go well for him, he was carrying it with them for too long. So that was just an interesting reflection from him. He talks about his time with the Tipperary Miners and the first season with them, how I think they were beaten by Clare and somebody else, and he admits like he didn't have his homework done. He was ill prepared, and that he kind of another harsh lesson for him about being prepared as a manager. But it was just I just thought there was nice honesty in both of them, and he also mentions about a GAA manager saying if they tell you they think it all up themselves, they're lying, because we're all, anyone involved in any sport, you're all sort of watching what everyone else is doing and putting your own spin in it and all of that. So it was very down to earth, it seems, which seems to be what he's bringing to the Waterford setup is just an honesty and a down to earthness, I think.
Yes, because you can get different type of coach interviews, and some of them use newfangled language and try and dress everything up into really complex theory, whereas he seems intent on dragging everything down to fairly simple language and fairly simple ideas.
Yeah, it was so simple. And even like there's a great referring to again his time as Tipperary, and he's talking about a kind of a pincer move from a manager and a selector to come in to tell you that you're dropped and the training before a match, and you know what's coming, and one's approach from one side and one from the other, and it's honest, because, and you can say he's describing how one of the individuals is shortening their steps to make sure they don't get there first, because nobody wants to have the conversation, and how he finds that those conversations difficult, which again is truth, absolute truth, that because as coaches and managers, you want the best for all these people, but you have to have those conversations, and nobody ever likes them or wants to have them.
No, and he's had some tough ones. I mean, he's dropped Maurice Shannon from the squad, one of 9 players he dropped, so we'll see how they go against Limerick this afternoon. Tommy, where do you want to take us?
I was quite tickled by a quote that Dermot Gilleece retrieved from the vaults in relation to Bernhard Langer's performance at Augusta National. And as you know, Joe, being a golfing man, Dermot Gilleece, one of his many talents is this ability to sort of find sort of great quotes, from old articles, sort of truffles from the back catalogue of golfing literature and golfing lore. And he has a nice one today on Langer, where he quotes an American golf writer by the name of Brian Hewitt, where he quotes Hewitt as saying, "The cosmic scientists take great academic delight informing us that the human mind can't fully comprehend the concept of infinity. But I know this not to be true, for I have seen Bernhard Langer's pre-shot routine." And
right.
That amused me greatly, and it put me in mind of a night in 2002. I was lucky enough to be in Seoul, Korea, and it was the night Ireland were beaten by Spain on penalties at that World Cup. was in a bar in Seoul into the small hours, the wee small hours that later that night with the great Dave Hannigan. And we got chatting to two German sports writers who were there covering the World Cup. And I expressed my admiration about Bernard Langer to one of them. And this German guy was very dismissive. He says, I just think of Bernard as a German bureaucrat, basically. And but there you are at the age of 63, this most methodical, famously methodical of men, still competing at that level, Joe.
It's extraordinary. I mean, it's extraordinary. He's hitting hybrids into holes, and the rest of them are hitting pitching wedges and wedges. I don't know how he's competing. I'd say it was an eye-opener for McIlroy to see him in action yesterday. I think the coverage is very favourable towards McIlroy. You know, there's lots of talk of his grit and how he came back brilliantly and he's played so well the last couple of days. I think we're potentially skipping over the issue that once again he's put himself out of a tournament, you know, and there's got to be a psychological component to this. We saw it at Portrush last year. Pressure really, really comes on for a player of McIlroy's stature a handful of times a year. That includes first rounds at majors he desperately wants to win, and he's not passing those tests often enough. So that, you know, there was only one player in the top 50. You have to get down to almost 50th for somebody else who shot a worse round than his 75. Now, I think he has to ask himself, why is that happening under pressure? And I don't think anybody's asking that of him today in the papers.
I mean, you tweeted yourself yesterday, Joe, Rory McIlroy, you know, the enigma.
Yeah.
The enigma.
Because
it's a mystery. It's a mystery to me.
There's no logic. You hear some people saying, well, he's not practicing. Well, if he's not practicing, why did he go to Butch Harmon? And why has he played so well over these couple of rounds since? You know, if he really wasn't practicing, he wouldn't be able to produce that kind of golf. And then it's, well, he can't handle the pressure. You know, but he has handled pressure in the past. So I don't know. It's genuinely very hard to work out. As it'd break your heart, and you know, I'm sure he talks about the perspective he has, and that is all great. But I mean, he snapped his club in half 2 or 3 weeks ago. Don't tell me he doesn't care about this desperately. So it is an enigma. Dylan Hartley with Paul Kimmage. It was a pairing that I thought this could be interesting. What do we learn, Cliodhna, about Dylan Hartley? What jumps out at you? It's a 2-page spread.
Yeah, well, it's. I don't know. It was very interesting to read it. The thing that he seemed to, he seemed to definitely be a man with a chip on his shoulder, and to see his rugby and his rugby career in a different way. He seems like someone who's letting loose a little bit now in what he's saying and his opinion, and that this is an underdog who's got an opportunity at a professional rugby career and wants to do the best for his family and all of that. That I think the interview finishes with him talking about that. But I think I don't know if he's someone, he doesn't seem like someone who's trying to make amends for a bad reputation. He just seems like somebody who had an edge and played with an edge, but is kind of wrapping it up, well, this is why. And he talks about when he was just 18, 19, and anybody who, like, even nobody had to say anything to him. They just had to arrive in a fancy car and he'd want to beat them up, you know. So he describes how he's always had this edge, and now, of course, it's going to show itself on the pitch, because who you are does come out on the pitch. But there seems to be a bit more to him than his reputation would suggest, I think.
Is there more to him? Like, I was kind of like, he talks about, you know, so in broad terms, like, it's 3 parts. All the, well, in fairness to him, I mean, he talks about the effect rugby's had on his body and the demands on the game, and that's very, very interesting. But in terms of, like, his own misdemeanours, I don't, like, he's just kind of, yeah, I did do this. I couldn't give an SH1T about that, or that. I don't know. I came away kind of confused by Hartley as a person. I don't feel like he did fully explain his thought process and things. Like when he says, I don't care about going on the lines and stuff. I didn't grow up in the lines. I find that hard to believe. Then he sort of concedes, although I would like to go on the lines. I don't know. I just, I found it difficult to get on board with him, Tommy. Maybe it's just me. I might have read it too quickly.
Joe, do you want me to come in there?
Yeah. What did you make of him? I may be doing a disservice.
Well, I just thought he exemplified the idea of the game he played as the law of the jungle, and he was prepared to go to be as ruthless and more ruthless in the jungle maybe than a lot of his peers. I mean, I have to say, one of the appeals of rugby union for me is its licensed violence. I mean, it is something I find appealing about it, fascinating, dramatic, at times almost voyeuristic, the punishment they inflict and absorb. And I kind of admired them the way, when I was a big boxing fan, the way I used to admire boxers for the punishment they were prepared to take and give out. Hartley is unrepentant and seemingly, and refreshingly so to my mind. But can I maybe one, if I may, Joe and Cliodhna, one brief passage. Bear in mind, it's Paul Kimmage, of course, who has worked his usual magic with a subject and gone down deeper than most interviewers will ever go. But we know that Paul Ghost wrote his brilliant book with Matt Hampson, the player who ended up catastrophically paralysed. And then, and so there he quotes an extract, Hartley, from the book about a scrum, and where his head went light. I could see stars. I didn't want to exhale. A chest full of air. We're holding that tight head down. Keep him in such pain that he loses the battle of wills. I was holding. And just when I think I'm gone, he goes. Their tight head succumbed. To use the brutal but metaphorical language of the front row, he had died. He won the penalty. We won the penalty. The scrum ended and my head popped up into the noise. I stood up and then I blacked out. I fell flat on my face. Welcome to my world, the heart of darkness that is rugby's front row. Found that a little bit chilling.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, it's an amazing insight. That it's almost who can hold their breath longer territory.
Yeah.
But if you have the capacity, like he obviously has the capacity to do that and to play like that and to withstand those sort of scenarios, and sort of it seems to take it in a stride. Well, this is my profession. This is the game that I love playing, and this is what you have to do. So there, in some ways, he admits how, like his book is called The Hurt, so he admits all that dark side of it, but there's a nonchalance about it too. Well, this is the game that we play. Yeah. And an acceptance of, well, I'm just doing what the game requires me to do.
Sorry, nonchalance is a great word. You've kind of hit, various thoughts on it. There is a nonchalance and a, lack of any kind of repent or sense that some of this stuff was unnecessary. I don't care what he argues. Some of this stuff that he did, some of the stuff he did was absolutely unnecessary to survive and prosper. And yet, as you said, Cliodhna, nonchalance is a good word for it. He's like, zero sense of, that got a bit out of hand, or I didn't need to do that. There's just like, at one point he says, I don't give a shit. And Paul has to say, you do, when he's trying to, talk about when he punched Rory Best and stuff like that. Sorry, Cliodhna, I interrupted you, but Cliodhna, nonchalance is a good word for it, yeah.
Yeah, and then the last column, I'm looking here at the page, the last column of it, he's talking about himself going to games now and trying out commentary, and you can see like he hates it. He hates being out of the ring. Yeah. And because that's where he wants to be, in that, and not part of that. Obviously, doesn't sit well with him. Yeah.
Well, it's really, I mean, it's so worth the read, because it's often, it's great to read something and be like, I'm not sure about this person, as opposed to journalist and interviewee coming together and presenting a nice picture. It's not that, and that's kind of what makes it really, really good. The headline on it is The Outsider. So that's Dylan Hartley, pages 6 and 7 in the Sunday Independent. Well worth a look. Guys, we're just out of time, unfortunately, because the GAA is taken over. So can I thank you both very much, Tommy Conlon?
Just a quick mention,
yes,
Joe,
Tommy.
for Paul Rowan's piece on Jack Charlton, on the Jack Charlton documentary. Some brilliant quotes from Jack's actually contemporaneous notes, handwritten notes on players, Dave O'Leary, Liam Brady, those guys from the 80s. I found that very interesting.
Yeah, amazing. You're dead right to mention that. And so they have taken photos of his handwritten notes as well, where he says things to himself like, be a dictator, but be a nice one, or never assume they know and understand. And you must enjoy it, they must enjoy it. All these notes he had written to himself. There's an archive there, it seems, of Charlton notes to himself, Tommy.
Yeah, very interesting. And actually to have whereas at the time they were merely tactical or observational about certain players, they have a historical quality now, an archival quality, and they should be kept in archive, because there was some very interesting insights into how this really, maybe the most important manager in the history of Irish sport, how he thought, how he operated. And I found it, maybe because I remember those players so well, found it particularly interesting and enjoyable to read.
Yeah, Finding Jack Charlton is that new documentary, so it's all in conjunction with that. Guys, thanks so much. Cliodhna, Tommy,
Thank
pleasure.
You, Joe.
Yeah,
thanks.
Pleasure as always. Thanks very much. Tommy Conlon, Cliodhna O'Connor there chatting through today's Sunday papers. Where are we going first? Are we going to Croke Park? We are. Mossy Quinn, what's happened here? This seems like the most extraordinary second 35 minutes.
Incredible turnaround here, Joe. Yeah, Meath were 6 down at half-time and they've come out winning by 9 points. They scored 5-5 in the second half to Kildare's 5 points, and right from the get-go, 2 early goals straight after half-time. Jordan Morris was integral in both. He laid on the first for Matthew Costello. He scored the second himself with a brilliant finish, and Cillian O'Sullivan then got the third. And Kildare just fell apart, to be honest with you. They just no one who get a hand on a ball and work it and just keep possession, and they just all throughout the pitch they just look leaderless. And Daniel Flynn came on and injected a little bit into them, and but Meath just kept the foot on the throat and kept going for goals when the opportunity arose. And so yeah, extraordinary second half here. So it finished 5-9 to Meath, 15 points to Kildare.
Like, we got to go, and I know we got to go, but Mossy, 5-9. Like, when Meath scored the third goal, does no one just kind of say we need to shut up shop here from a Kildare point of view?
Yeah, but there was no one there to do that, Joe. You're looking, waiting for someone to kind of get a hold of the back six and see, put a bit of structure on it or stop a runner coming through the middle. And it wasn't as if Meath did anything drastically different in terms of they did get support runners to the full forward line, and that was where the first goal came. We spoke about it at half time, and there was just Kildare, seems a lethargy around the middle third, and they just, in fairness, when Meath got in there, they took the chances, but Kildare would be very, very disappointed. Okay, well, you and John are going to chat through that game in a few months' time in a bit more detail. So 24 points to 15, Meath 5-9, Kildare 15 points. Mayo up by 2 in Pearse Stadium. We'll check in with Andy Moore in just a sec.